You can have your low blocks. You cannot give us penalties. You can try your hardest to even have a single shot on target. It won't matter because Arsenal are top of the table. They're clear and they're gunning for the title. This is today's Arsenal Raw Reaction Show following their 1-0 win at Fulham. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is indeed the Arsenal Raw Reaction Show, joining you the morning after the night before. Arsenal winning 1-0 in their latest London derby, another victory against a side that had taken points off them last season as they look to move 4 points clear and succeed in doing so before Liverpool host Manchester United later on today. 3 points clear, of course, of Manchester City as well at the top of the league. But it is Liverpool, of course, who are kind of the yardstick for the Gunners. And so moving 4 points clear of them is in particular, obviously, something to be very happy about. But good morning to all of you joining us this morning. Greatly appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much for doing so. You can probably tell by the look on my face, I'm still incredibly tired. It was a long day yesterday. Of course, a 5:30 kickoff in West London. Didn't get home till around near 11 p.m. and still was working when I got back home as well to get pieces written, of course, for the morning. But overall, very happy with the results, very happy with what was going down and what went on, of course, with Arsenal as well. And, of course, with just happy. Just that's not even a reason to be happy. Just being happy is a good enough reason to be joyous about that. But Arsenal, of course, getting a result always does help. Good morning to all of you joining us in the chat box this morning. Good morning to Black Shine, to Rich, to Rob, to Claire, to Pam. Good morning to Granddaddy Good and Paul. We've got Carrie Ann and Rich. We've got Martin and Sid and Sean and Barry. We've got Byron and Knowledge and I Pung. In the chat, we've got Nameka. We've got Natty. We've got LP, I think. We've got D, we've got Mike, we've got Glenn, and plenty more of you guys and girls in the chat box as well. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. It is greatly appreciate you being here. And if you could drop a like on the video, could subscribe to the channel, that would also be greatly appreciated as well. Let's not waste any more time, shall we? Let's jump into today's slides and discuss what was yesterday's win in West London at Craven Cottage. Your match day vlog will be available, of course, on my Instagram page at Tom Canton Media a little bit later on this morning. So look out for that. You'll be able to witness the nicest walk in football, as it's described. And it was an incredibly nice walk, as it usually is, down by the Thames and then through kind of the parks towards Craven Cottage. And the mood was good, I think. You know, there was a confidence, but there was also some elements, I think, of trepidation, anticipation. But to go 4 points clear of Liverpool, 3 points clear, of course, at the top of the table, but 4 points clear of Arsenal's main title rivals, Liverpool, at this stage of the season, is a big boost. And that can, of course, come down to just 1 point if Liverpool manage to get the result that most expect them to get against Manchester United. But they have had such a poor run of results so far that anything is perhaps possible. I'm so pleased that Arsenal's results against teams that obviously they struggled with last season have happened in quite quick succession. Now, if they'd have been spread out over the course of the season, then I don't think maybe the impact will be as great. But the reality is that that Arsenal have struggled against these teams. Newcastle, West Ham, Fulham, and of course, upcoming next for Arsenal at home in the league, at least, is Crystal Palace, who also took points off Arsenal. In the past 3 to 4 weeks, obviously, with the international break there, Arsenal have managed to gain 8 points more than they had on the previous season. In fact, you could argue that the dropping of those 8 points is an 8-point swing. But it's just such an impressive turnaround of form for Arsenal. And also the consistency of which they keep on winning games. That also is what is just so impressive. The only games they failed to win this season have come against Liverpool and Manchester City, as we've discussed before. And as I've tried to kind of temper those fears, those worries, those anxious trepidations about Arsenal's form, well, the teams like Liverpool and City have not been the teams that have defined who has won the league. It's about how consistent you have been over the course of all of the other 17 sides in the league. That's why Liverpool won it last season. That's why City won it the season before. It wasn't because of the results against those top two. And although Arsenal, of course, will be frustrated with their results in those games and arguably could have got more and deserved arguably more from both of those games, the fact that they have managed to just beat every single other team in the 9 games that they have, or the 8 games, that they've played and won 6 of them, is very encouraging indeed. But moving into the lineup for the team selection, I think it was what most would have expected. I thought Martinelli might get the nod because it was being a game away from home against a Fulham side who, we might ourselves be able to hit dangerously on the counter. But what I thought was most interesting about this actually is how deep Fulham set up. And Arsenal and Arteta in particular guessed that utterly spot on. And Trossard is a better player for those deep block games. Martinelli does tend to struggle against teams that sit in that lower block because he has to try and take his man on, which is sometimes he struggles with doing such a thing. And he has to work on kind of the runs and the triangles and the 1-2s. And I thought that Trossard in the end proved to be the better choice of the two. So credit to Trossard for his performance. I thought Eze, obviously in the 10, replacing Martin Odegaard. I think it's fair to say that we missed Martin in this game. I don't think it's controversial to say that. I think Eze had a little bit of a difficult display, kind of struggled to get into the game as much as possible. Yes, there were a couple of nice passes that had maybe Viktor been a little bit better in getting on the end of, then we maybe be talking slightly differently about his performance. But I did think that he's kind of in these types of games. And actually, James Benge in the post-match press conference asked Mikel Arteta exactly that. He asked Arteta about Eze and about kind of his struggles, if you like, against low block sides, because in particular, he hasn't really come up against that for Palace. That's not the type of games that Palace have when they manage to get into those kind of key positions. And Arteta, I think, was, agreeable on this, agreeable that this is the kind of struggles that Eze will have. And he said no, because he is more used to probably attacking open spaces and breaks and facing and carrying the ball with the space in front of him. He's so good and comfortable doing that. I think he had his moments today. I think he played Viktor through once or twice in really good spaces, and maybe if that would have finished in a goal, it would have looked a bit different. But I'm very happy with what he's doing, and we can use him in different positions. And today we used him on that one, and we carry on training him too. And it's, I think that's absolutely fair enough. And he is going to adapt. He is going to grow. He is going to change. And eventually, I think Eze and Viktor, of course, as well, who we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, they will adapt to this new system and this new team. And it does take time. So I don't think we can be too kind of critical at this stage. But overall, the team selection was pretty much spot on. But Calafiori, my goodness gracious me, this man is playing like a man absolutely possessed. It's such a shame that he was just so ever so slightly offside for the goal that he did score, because what a goal it would have been. I know for a fact he was absolutely gutted after the game to see the flag, of course, go up, because it was a stunning strike. A brilliant touch from Trossard, of course, as well, to set up the chance. And he's kind of like, he's not run too soon. He's not made his run earlier than he should have done. What he's done is he's kind of stood in an offside position, unaware that the line of the Fulham defenders has kind of stepped up, and he's not been alert to that early enough. He's kind of watching the play rather than watching the game around him. And had he have maybe been a little bit more aware, he would have been that slight half yard onside to then take the ball on and strike the ball. Maybe if he was onside, he wouldn't have struck the ball in the angle and the direction and the competence that he did. And it was so funny because I was sitting next to Charles during the game, and we were watching kind of the warm-up before the match, and there was a moment where Calafiori was kind of set through in a training moment before the game, and he dragged a shot horrifically wide of the goal. And we kind of both looked at each other like, oh, that wasn't very good. But thankfully, as kind of, I think all of us do that thing in a build-up to a game, and we have a bad shot in the warm-up, and we say, well, it's best to get those out of the way now. And it seems that Calafiori certainly did that. He had another volley, of course, in the game as well that just went over the bar, and a right-footed shot also that tested a block, that forced a block, of course, from a player before it was heading towards Bernd Leno's goal. So I thought Calafiori, again, another really solid performance from him. But the best player on the pitch, without a doubt, was Bukayo Saka. Bukayo Saka was the man of the match in this particular game, because his tenacity, his ability to just utterly destroy Ryan Sessegnon on every single occasion, pretty much. He had him on toast throughout the match. And then, of course, when Kevin came on the field, and we'll talk about the penalty incident in a little bit, he then just started going to work on him and just beating him with absolute confidence as well. But for me, these are the games where you just see the flair, the brilliance, the quality that is Bukayo Saka. It was his delivery, of course, for the corner that eventually would lead to the goal. But he was unfortunate not to get more, I think, in terms of goal contributions in this game. He was the captain on the day, and I think Trossard in the chat box is right. Saka with the captain's performance. I think absolutely right. It was a captain's performance indeed from Bukayo Saka. Utterly brilliant. And a level raiser and an example, I think. He talked about in the international break, he doesn't really see himself necessarily as a role model, but I think he stood as an example to his teammates in this particular fixture. And it did take a long time. You know, we had chances. Gyokeres had opportunities. We had other opportunities from set pieces, and we just couldn't really find our way through. And so when you're playing against a low block, you need to have other ideas about how to score. And Arsenal have refined the art of set pieces to such a degree that even if we come up against a side who produces one of the deepest low blocks that you will see, it does not matter because we find a way to get the result. And Arsenal did just that. Brilliant delivery from Saka, who himself admitted after the game that he'd had some absolutely rubbish deliveries during the match. Utterly awful corners at some points in this game that were defended very comfortably. And utterly, I thought that the delivery for Gabriel's then flicked header, which was great. And Gabriel had a little bit of a difficult game. I thought, not a difficult game overall, but certainly the first 15 to 20 minutes. And I mean, Arsenal overall in the first 15 to 20 minutes were a little bit off it. It was a little bit of a hangover, I think, from the international break in those opening minutes of the game. Gabriel was a bit loose in his passing. Eze was a little bit slow. We talked about that. But ultimately, Gabriel, when he has a bad moment, so often, and in particular against Fulham as well, there's such a history between Gabriel and Fulham. His first Arsenal Premier League goal came against Fulham. He scored a number of times against them. And, of course, you might remember the game at the Emirates where he gave the ball away to Mitrovic before he scored a very late winning goal at home. Or was it a winning goal? Perhaps an equalising? I think it was a winning goal against Fulham at the Emirates a few seasons ago. And he tends to kind of always be in a position when he's had a little bit of a difficult start to then turn it around. He did it as well against Newcastle. I didn't think he had a particularly great game against Newcastle in the first half. Obviously, he had a little bit of a moment with Voltamada that he was kind of lucky to get away with, arguably, as well. And then, of course, scores the winning goal, you know, right at the end to change the whole narrative around his performance. But his flicked header was great. He probably would have been looking to try and score himself, but it didn't matter because Trossard was on hand once again. The Belgian with a utterly beyond important goal. You know, he just scores important goals for Arsenal. I think for context reasons, Martinelli has had the better season overall than Trossard. You know, I think he's now just gone ahead of Trossard in terms of goals and assists, has the Belgian. But I think overall, contextually, Martinelli stood out a little bit more for me. But this goal here, of course, brings the two of them closer together in terms of their impact and importance to the team. And Trossard just finds a way of impacting games, maybe when he's not necessarily involved in it too greatly. He was an asset, I thought, on the left-hand side, produced some good crosses, some great touches. Of course, the one we've talked about to Calafiori was good, but it is this finish, of course, that is the main deliverance of the points for Arsenal. And he scored for Belgium, of course, during the international break as well against Wales. He is still an asset to this team. And it's the reason why Arsenal and Arteta in particular wanted to keep him and weren't that keen on seeing him leave in the summer. He still has plenty to offer and did so here. We need to talk a little bit about Viktor Gyokeres in some more detail before we go into some of the decisions in the game. I think this is probably the best opportunity we've seen Gyokeres get into some scoring situations. There were three big moments in particular. There was the shot in the first half, of course, set through down the right half space before he kind of pinged a shot at Leno. A decent height for the goalkeeper. I think, you know, in those moments, if you're being super critical, you've got to try and get that shot driven lower. So you've got to try and get the keeper kind of having to go deeper down to the ground to get his hands to the shot. So the shot, while hard and hit accurately, was a good height for Leno to stop. The second opportunity, of course, in the second half, where Trossard kind of pings the ball over the top and the ball's bouncing. He does so well to hold defenders off and kind of create chaos as the ball is kind of coming through. He does so well using his strength in those moments. But then when the chance came, he kind of scoops the ball high with his left foot over the bar. He had a similar opportunity against Newcastle where he also kind of scooped his shot over the bar. Should be getting that shot on target. And then, of course, there's another chance right towards the end of the game, which leads to a double save from Bernd Leno, who, without, Bernd Leno absolutely kept Fulham in this game. There's no doubt about that. Another strike, which he saves well. And I think it's Martinelli with the follow-up that Leno then saves again. So, yeah, I think Gyokeres, he will be frustrated by this game. He'll be very annoyed by this as well. He arguably could have won a penalty, which we'll talk about in a second as well. But I just think that those that are being so critical of him at the beginning of the season have absolutely no intention of being magnanimous about Gyokeres. I think those that are being really critical of him at the moment are either not Arsenal fans, first of all, and they're just kind of finding anything to moan about, but the Arsenal fans that are being just so over the top about Gyokeres are those, I think, that were overall not that keen on him coming in the first place. Maybe they were like me, leaning more towards Šeško or Ekitike or somebody else and wanted to get somebody else in. I was one of those people. I wasn't leaning towards Gyokeres as my number one option for the summer, but I'm not ruling this guy out at this stage. I'm not being so petty and childish to rule him out or to speak about him in such derogatory terms as some do, because it's still so early in his time. Eze has not been much better than Gyokeres, I don't think, in the context of both the starts of their season. They both need time. They both need the ability to adapt. They both need the ability to show what their qualities are once they have adapted to this. And we need to adapt to them as much as they need to adapt to us as well. And I think Kai Havertz coming back will help Viktor, having that, that person pushing him, having somebody where he can come off in games and rest. And he has played so much football at the start of a new season for a new team and a new league. It's, for me, I'm just not particularly keen on those that just like to batter them. Mainly it is rival fans, but I am quite judgmental of those Arsenal fans that have taken it upon themselves to be so judgmental at this early point in the season. You can be critical, you can be analytical of his performances, you can point out the shortcomings, you can point out the areas that he needs to do better, because there are several of those. But those that are talking about him in certain ways, they just need to screw their heads on a bit tighter. But let's talk about the penalty calls in this game. There were two main ones for me. There's this one, of course, which is on the 56th minute in the game. I think it's Cuenca that Gyokeres gets into a bit of a tangle with. The ball comes in. Gyokeres has the kind of the initiative or the incentive here to take the ball beyond the defender. The planted foot comes down. The standing foot comes down. The left foot there, you can just see on the bottom kind of central part of your image there. I'm not sure about this one. I think this is one of those where if it's not given on the field, VAR certainly is never going to overturn it. Or rather, it shouldn't overturn it, I don't think. If it's given on the field, does VAR overturn it? Well, from the images that we saw that we're going to talk about in just a second, clearly they do. But I'm not sure about this one. You might remember the game against Manchester United where Saliba, right at the end of the game, was also kind of analysed for a potential penalty call. Can't remember who it was in the box that he brings down, if it was Fernandes or Dalot. But there is one of those where kind of the player's movement goes into the standing foot. I'm not sure I would want to see a penalty given. I don't think there is enough here for a penalty for me. But I also thought about that in the moment. This challenge, of course, from Kevin on Saka, which Anthony Taylor did on the field give a penalty for, which in retrospect, VAR then overturned. Now, first thing to say about this, you have to remove the amount of time it took for them to come to the decision, because as we found out, the VAR screen, as Arteta said after the game, was having problems. We found out in retrospect. The VAR screen was having some issues, and that's why it took so long to get the decision made, because Anthony Taylor wasn't given the images and so wasn't able to actually see what was going on until a little bit later. And that's why Arteta explained after the match why he was so animated on the touchline, because of how long it was taking. But it was a technology issue, not a process issue. However, in the moment, I think I got really focused on the touch on the ball. I think I was really focused on the fact that Kevin gets a very clear touch on the ball and plays the ball in this action, that I utterly and entirely kind of missed in the moment the contact on Saka's right knee and upper thigh or lower quad. Like that part of his leg clearly is touched by Kevin and impeded by Kevin before Kevin makes contact with the ball. Getting contact with the ball, as we know and have talked about at length before, is not enough always to get away with a clean foul. But in this instance, as opposed to the incident with Gyokeres at Newcastle, where Pope does get a touch, it's negligible touch on the ball before contact with Gyokeres, which VAR deems it he has played the ball before the man. In this case, Kevin plays the player. In retrospect, having watched this video so many times now from different angles, you can see him play Saka before he gets that touch on the ball. But what was interesting is actually that Arteta, speaking about the penalty afterwards, admitted that he felt that it wasn't. He says, "I think what I have is that it probably wasn't a penalty. So probably they made the right decision, and I was animated on the touchline because of the process. That's it." Now I don't know if Mikel, like me, didn't see enough of the incident in the moment. I mean, I'm doing about 1 billion jobs these days during the game that it's very hard sometimes to witness everything that goes on, to be honest with you. And that's why I watch the games a lot again after it has happened. I've seen some discussion and analysis from pundits after the game. Many of them feel that it is indeed a penalty. The player is taken out before the player gets the ball. Chills, I'm always one of those people that says it's a contact sport, absolutely. But you can still have fouls in a contact sport, and there is a foul there. Saka is impeded before the ball is taken by Kevin. That is just the definition, factually, of a foul. So, yeah, look, it's a penalty. It's one of those, again, where we're, as Arsenal fans, constantly having to kind of battle with this idea that we see decisions that we just can't quite understand when, because it's not just like me watching a video screen or you watching a video screen. These are paid professionals, just paid professionals when it comes to making calls in the sport of football. It's one of those, again, where I would love to hear the audio, and I hope that we get another opportunity to as well, you know, in that the referee program with, you know, Howard Webb. And I say I want to hear it. It almost just makes it worse sometimes listening to them speak. But this is the wrong call. This is the wrong call. And they just get it wrong so many times. And it just, you know, and I know that I am watching more of Arsenal than I am of any other team. So psychologically, there's always going to be this kind of idea that I feel as though it happens more to Arsenal than anyone else. But I almost feel that it does happen to Arsenal more than anyone else. And I feel like there is just so many incidents of wrong decisions being made. If Arsenal hadn't have won this game and Fulham had somehow scored and we hadn't have got this penalty, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done. So yeah, it's just so incredibly frustrating. But in the moment, I couldn't see why it took so long, other than the technology we found out later. I thought it was a clearly good challenge, but in retrospect, having seen the details afterwards, and Saka actually spoke after the game as well, and spoke about the penalty incident himself. He gave something of an insight into what he felt was. He says, let me find it. For me, it's a penalty. Of course, I understand he touched the ball, but I felt a big contact on my right knee before he touched the ball. And for me, any contact like that in the box is a penalty. The decision has been made. I don't want to dwell on it. Let's just move forward. We got the 3 points. That's what Saka had to say afterwards. So I guess he's right, but we would be dwelling on it, wouldn't we, if we didn't win this game? And I think maybe Arteta wouldn't have been as magnanimous as he was after the game about it if Arsenal hadn't won this game. So I think that's probably fair to point out. Some of your reactions, of course. Claire says, basically, it's another wrong decision, but what use is there complaining? Nothing ever changes, and I'm tired of it. I absolutely empathise with you, Claire, on that one. It seems that most of you are kind of feeling this way. SJ says, talking for too long to make these penalty decisions. I mean, again, the time it took to make the decision, I just don't know whether or not you can use that in this case because it's technology. I just don't see how we can use the time it took because of the technological issues that there had been during that moment. But we can talk about how it's not a clear and obvious error, which is, it's just not a clear and obvious error, is it? Because there's clearly enough doubt that there's contact on Saka before contact on the ball. Anyway, it puts Arsenal, as I said, 4 points clear of Liverpool, 3 points clear of Manchester City before Liverpool play Manchester United this afternoon. Liverpool and Palace played out in a crazy game, 3-3 that game ended, which leaves them on 15 points and 4 points behind Arsenal. Spurs also play today. They can go within 2 points of Arsenal in their fixture a little bit later on this afternoon. Chelsea getting a result in their game, which saw Ange Postecoglou sacked after just 39 days in charge. What did I tell you? I remember when he was appointed. Do you remember the show we did? You can probably rewind to it. It's only 39 days ago. I told you this was the worst appointment that they could have made. And, you know, it's nice being vindicated when you say and make points in something, but to be vindicated after just 39 days is quite something else. Sunderland, I mean, wow, Sunderland are just being so impressive, aren't they, so far? 14 points on the board for them. Crystal Palace dropping down to 8th in the table. Brighton, Danny Welbeck scoring twice against Newcastle. Voltemade getting a fantastic flicked goal, but it meant nothing because Brighton got a really important result against Newcastle, who drop into the bottom half of the table. Everton as well, they getting another beating, which has kind of seen their early season form dip down the league as well. So that is where Arsenal sit, and it's nice viewing. Still get some people finding ways to somehow moan about the manager, I'm sure, but Arsenal sitting pretty at the top of the table is a nice thing to see after 8 games. We are now nearly a quarter of the way through the season already. How mad is that? Nearly a quarter of the way. We're only a game and a half or so away from being indeed a quarter of the way through the season. Absolutely crazy. Mikel Arteta, indeed, I kind of touched upon the fact that he explained his touchline behaviour after the match, but he was very pleased by the game. I asked Arteta afterwards and pointed out to him that for the first time since November 2003, Arsenal managed to keep another team from having a shot on target for the successive Premier League game in a row. So against both West Ham and also against Fulham, Arsenal prevented a single shot on target, which is the first time that has happened since November 2003. Arteta said, and then I said, you know, does that mean that you can now sit a lot more comfortably when you're just winning by a single goal in games like this? To which he said, not comfortably, because, well, this pitch feels like it's smaller and they are straight away on you in the box. But the big chances, they didn't generate any big chances. It was more the feelings on there, especially in the first half with the giveaways. And because there are a lot of players with a lot of quality in the final third, Jimenez in the box is a real threat. And thankfully, it was enough. Charlie Wyatt from The Sun asked about how important it is to grind out wins in these games, to which Arteta said, yes, you have to play the best in relation to the opponent and play that you have, and, you know, play the way you have to play. That is what we have to play. The best against Atletico Madrid is going to be different to the best of today, and make sure that we are able to take the game into those areas. That is going to further our possibility to win the game, and we continue to try to improve. Of course, Arsenal play Atletico Madrid in just 2 days' time now. You know, I've got to be at the press conference tomorrow, open training session tomorrow. It's kind of mad, isn't it? That we're going to be sitting in a press conference tomorrow, yet we played yesterday. That is the schedule for Arsenal. That is the reality at the moment. Asked about another set-piece goal. He said, great, because often, obviously, we generate so many set pieces. You have to start from there. We generate so many. We have to understand them. And against these low blocks, when they don't really want to drop and commit that many players there, we'll have another opportunity to put the players that we want in the positions that we want with the role that we want. And we need to exploit that. We could have exploited it today in different ways. At the end, it was a set piece. So more than welcome. And I think that actually those words from Arteta there stand as a kind of a warning almost, I think. I think it stands as a warning to opposition sides that if you want to set up in low blocks, feel free to set up in low blocks, because we have other ways of beating you. And people moan about the style of play, and people moan because they have nothing else to moan about how we aren't necessarily dominating or blowing teams away at this stage. But the fact of the matter is, it's so arrogant. It's so arrogant how some people speak about football in an Arsenal context these days. And the reason why it's arrogant is because they utterly disregard the opponent. They utterly and entirely disregard the fact we're playing against somebody else. And all they can think of is to focus on Arsenal. The reality is that Arsenal played well yesterday after the first 20 minutes. They were dominant in so many areas. They created some really clear-cut chances that they probably should have done better with. But ultimately, the low block that Fulham deployed has really cost Arsenal in previous seasons. We've dropped points in this ground against Fulham's low block. We've beaten them well in other games. But there is so many examples of Arsenal dropping points against teams that sit in low blocks because us and other teams sometimes really do struggle to break those low blocks down. And so you need plan B. And Arsenal's plan B, so often, and it's very successful, is how good they are at set pieces. When the chances that are falling to Gyokeres aren't being taken, the chances that are going to other players in the box, or maybe the chance that we're scoring are slightly offside, when plan A is not quite clicking, we move to plan B. Or we don't even move to it. We just have it. It's in our locker. We have that ability to be able to score goals against teams operating in low blocks because we are so good at set pieces. And other teams this season have not picked up as many points as Arsenal because they have not been able to pivot to other ways of scoring goals, like Arsenal have pivoted to another way of scoring goals. And it really pisses off rival fans. It really annoys them. It really irritates them. It also really irritates those that can't stand Mikel Arteta being Arsenal manager and sitting top of the table. It really annoys those fans that annoyingly are within our own fan base, amazingly so. So, for all I care, keep on annoying them. Keep on annoying our rivals. Keep on annoying our own critics that exist within our own fan base, because I don't frankly care. As long as we're winning games, I don't care. If Arsenal win every single game for the rest of the season 1-0 when it's a header from a corner or a tap in from a corner, I don't care. Because it means we would go on to win the league. I don't care how we win the league, if we win the league, as long as we win the league. That's all that matters to me. But it seems that the only thing people have got left to aim at Arsenal is how they're winning. Imagine being in that position, that the only way you can find a way to moan at Arsenal is not that they're not winning. It's now, oh, but they didn't win in the way I wanted them to win. My goodness me. Get your head screwed on a bit tighter, smile a bit more, and enjoy watching Arsenal, because there's so many teams in this world that don't get to watch their team sit top of the table and win so consistently. All right, this is part 2 of today's show, where we'll be jumping into the chat box and tackling some of your questions and comments. So if you'd like to throw some comments and questions into the chat box, now is the time to do just that. Drop a capital Q. It really does help the comments to stand out, and I usually be able to find them much simpler, and I can go through them. If you could drop a like, of course, on the video, I would greatly appreciate it as well. If you happen to be in the UK, and maybe even abroad as well, and you want to walk into your local newsagent and pick up a copy of the Mirror as well, you can also do that with some of my thoughts. Although I will tell you that my piece in the Mirror this morning, which obviously has to be submitted on the full-time whistle, at that point, I was convinced that it wasn't a penalty. I will say that. So there may be some words in that piece in retrospect that I probably would slightly change. But the pressures of course, doing a match report on the whistle means that you don't have the ability to change things in retrospect. So, yeah, do forgive me for that slight change of opinion since having seen a lot more of the match. Right, let's jump, shall we, into some of your thoughts. Byron says, Tom, besides maybe in 2004, have you been in a happier place as an Arsenal fan than now? Or am I assuming too much? I haven't been this happy with my beloved club or team in years. You know, Arteta's tenure as Arsenal manager has been the second happiest time of my life as an Arsenal fan. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that at all. You know, the 2010s are really difficult. We picked up some FA Cups, which were great moments, but consistent periods of time of enjoying Arsenal, enjoying being an Arsenal fan, these 5 years have been better than that. The late 2000s, of course, certainly not. We had some title races. We had some really dour moments and times where we got to a Champions League semi-final and lost to Man United. And, of course, with some horrible injuries, which cost Arsenal perhaps titles. But it's not since the early 2000s, of course, where I was only, in single digits in terms of years of age, where I still was footballingly conscious enough to enjoy those moments. But this has been the most enjoyable time as an Arsenal fan in these last 5 years for, 20 years? 15, 20 years. So, yeah, 100%. 11 mod says, under Arteta, Arsenal is back. Enough said. Love that. iPunk says, Tom, that match just showed us we still somewhat struggle creatively against low blocks. Eza can't do it himself yet. I think it's important to put the word yet on that. As I said, it's still so early. Like, why? I don't ever get on board with the idea of people being so definitive. Without a doubt, the definitiveness that some people talk in the way about certain players at certain stages of the season, it's not conducive to an encouraging conversation about the real context of what's going on. Gyokeres and Eza, these guys need more time. They have to adapt and change. Eza's played about 6 different roles. He's played left wing, he's played right 8, he's played left 8, he's played 10. Like he's had to play second striker at some point. He's joined a brand new team playing against teams that set up very differently to how he played when he was playing for Palace. He's got to change and adapt, and his abilities will help him do that. That's why he does so well for England sometimes. So I just think that speaking in such a definitive way, Eze can't do it himself yet is the word to add on to that sentence. I understand. I know you're not coming from a critical place. I just think it's important that we kind of think about, when we're writing these questions and writing these comments about Arsenal, when we put them out publicly, it's important to think about it. Before you hit that enter button, just think, is that fair? Maybe not. But he absolutely can improve. He can improve. And obviously, I think Ødegaard's absence is being felt. I think that he's obviously such a creative presence in the middle of the park, and we miss him so greatly when he's not there. And it's such a shame that he got injured, because I think before he got injured, he was starting to show again some of his most creative moments. So, yeah, I do think we can hope for more, but it will take some time. Freddie says, on Arsenal, Sean Dyche says he trained set pieces because historically set pieces are something like 30% of all goals. I mean, well, there you go. Kev says, exactly. We've played good football for so long and won nothing. I'll take the 1-0 set piece boring games if we win the league all day. And that's what I mean. Arsenal used to play some amazing football. It was entertaining. We would watch it and be like, wow, we lost. So I'm not fussed about how Arsenal are playing as long as they're winning. And I find it baffling that somehow people now are using that as a stick to beat Arsenal when they win so consistently. It is such a strange one. Cass says, totally agree, Tom. As long as we are winning, no matter how it comes to who gives a toss. Absolutely. Joe says, do you think Lewis Skelly takes this inverted role too seriously? Calafiori is so spontaneous, causing problems, being unpredictable, and I don't think it's an age difference. Oh, I absolutely do think it's an age difference. I think Calafiori's in his early 20s. He's got 4 or 5 years on Lewis Skelly, and Lewis Skelly can play in midfield. He can play as a left back. He's still kind of learning about himself as a player. I wouldn't be worrying too much, mate, about Lewis Skelly. I really, really wouldn't. I don't think it's the time to do that. Jonas says, Tom, what do you think about Graham Potter on the verge of becoming the manager of Sweden? I think Graham Potter was in a really unfortunate situation at West Ham. I think West Ham are awful. Sorry to my mother-in-law if she's listening, but I think West Ham are awful. And I just think that Graham Potter, in the right environment, can be a good coach. I think in Sweden, he's been a good coach, of course, with Östersunds. I think he was a good coach at Swanley. He was a good coach at Brighton. At Chelsea, it was just a Chelsea in a horrendous moment. I think he took over West Ham in a horrendous moment. So, yeah, for me, I think that that's not a terrible appointment. It could have been better, but he has knowledge of the country. I think he speaks the language. So I wouldn't be too down on that decision until you've seen what maybe is to come from that. That's just how I feel. Chris says, hi, Tom. Do you think Arteta has been rotating enough? Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've had so many different changes to this team. We've had games where Saliba's been rested. Mosquera's come in. We've had games where Ben White started, of course, at the start of the season. He's come in for games at the Port Vale match. At Athletic Club, of course, we made a couple of changes as well, I think. So, yeah, I do. We're early in the season. I think this is a really important game, a tough game. And I know we've got Atletico, but we might see a couple of changes for that Atletico game. He might actually feel more comfortable rotating against Atletico than Fulham away in the league, which you might see as a bit baffling. But actually, Fulham away in the Premier League is a really hard game. They haven't lost. And again, for the record, I don't think I've mentioned this. Fulham had not lost at home in the league for an incredible amount of time. They hadn't lost at home in the league all season to this point. I mean, I don't know how far you have to go back before you actually find last season a defeat at home for Fulham. Let me see if we can actually find that result. Can I go further back? Why can't I go further back? More matches. That's what I want. So this season they hadn't lost at home. Obviously, they drew with Manchester United. They've beaten Leeds. They beat Brentford. They beat Cambridge. And then, of course, lost to us. But if you go back last season, the last game of the season, they were at home to Manchester City. You did manage to beat them 2-0. So this season, they are unbeaten. And Arsenal are the first team to beat them in Craven Cottage. So, yeah, it's several months that they've gone without losing in their own backyard, and Arsenal managed to do that. Saskia says, was a little surprised the ESR didn't start. I wouldn't be. He's not been very good. I have to say, I was speaking to a couple of Fulham fans, and they're not impressed with Smith Rowe at all. He's not in a very good place. I think Josh King is a very exciting talent there, and there's no surprise he's playing so consistently over Smith Rowe. Smith Rowe is not having a particularly great time. And I was talking to James Benge afterwards as we were walking back to the train station, and we both, kind of thought, and we're theorising around the idea that, it could be a slippery slope for Smith Rowe's career. It really, really could be a slippery slope for Smith Rowe's career, which is a shame because there was such talent there, but he just doesn't. The reason why it didn't work out at Arsenal for me, for Smith Rowe, is because he doesn't give you, as well as injuries, is that he didn't add the extra 10 to 15% that you need to have as a player playing in this current iteration of Arsenal, and he doesn't have that. So that's why I don't think it's worked out for him. And at Fulham, I just think he maybe is a little bit. I don't know. I think maybe that the Arsenal kind of story ending has maybe in some ways kind of lingered into his time with Fulham. He started all right, but he has slipped quite a lot. Culture Mark says, TC, do you think there is a conspiracy against us? Last night, match of the day, didn't even discuss or mention the clear and obvious penalty. It's a conspiracy, I say. A conspiracy. What do you say? I always lean on the side of hope and optimism that's not the case. Because until we have significant evidence to the contrary, that's what I have to assume and pray is the reality. And I just assume that they're bad. So that's all I've got. Jabby says, Eze will come good. He is stronger on the left and is currently learning to play on the right, which is essentially what Ødegaard obviously does, which is a very fair point. Amiral Gunnar says, Gyokeres gets a lot of criticism. I'm happy with him. He's been better than Eze up to now. Martin says, slightly off topic. Am I correct in saying the September and October interludes next season are being revamped? We don't know if it's been fully confirmed yet. We're still kind of waiting on whether that's going to happen or not. We don't know. Roland Royce says Uncle Tom is I don't know why I'm called Uncle Tom, but maybe it's a way of I haven't even read the rest of the comment yet, but I assume it's probably not going to be nice. It's a walking contradiction. He was one of the most vocal voices opposing the Noni Madueke signing. Oh yeah, you proved me wrong. I don't really know. And to be fair, I was opposed to the Noni Madueke signing of the amount of money it was costing. I didn't agree with the amount of money. But I also pointed out on several shows that a lot of people who've been analysing Noni Madueke have been saying for quite a long time that his talent was basically waiting to be unlocked. Now, I think he's done very good at the start of this season. But if that's all you've got... If that's all you've got to really... We've just beaten Fulham. It's been about a month since Madueke got injured. And that's all you've got? Come with something else, mate. Fuad says, Tom, would you switch Rice and Eze so Eze could become more effective on the left? Maybe. It's not a bad shout. Claire says, at least it wasn't Grandad, Tom. That would be pretty harsh. Yeah. That would be pretty harsh. Maximia says, flash news, we are allowed to change our opinions. What's the point of having an opinion if you can't change it? So close, Maximius. What's the point of having a mind if you can't change it? But I love that you're taking on my words. Kumbi says, I don't bloody care how we managed to stay at the top. On to the next one. With Fulham, we beat them, including the offside by Calafiori, and we were denying 2 clear penalties that we were good. Arsenal deserved to win this game by a lot more than just 1 goal, but who cares? Who cares how we win? 11 says, honestly, most people were wrong about Madueke, myself included. Exactly. Isn't it nuts these days? You get people in this world who think that You can't ever be wrong. You can't. Being wrong is some kind of weakness. Trust me, those people that have the lack of arrogance, the humility, the humbleness to be able to hold their hands up and say, you know what, we got that one wrong. I was wrong about that. They're the people you want to be around. They're the people you want to surround yourself with. If you surround yourself with people that just stubbornly sit by their views no matter what, they're not the people you want to hang around with. They're not the people you want to look to. They're just not. So it says, Tom, why can't I take a mixed style with substance? More like the way that we used to play with Ozil Sanchez and we were much easier on the eye. Mate, we were 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th at times. If you want to go back to those days playing a little bit prettier and not winning as often, be my guest. Be my guest. I couldn't care less how we're playing as long as we're winning. I couldn't care less. I just don't care how we're playing as long as we're winning. I don't care. I don't know why so many people do care. I guess it's the only thing people have left to moan about. I just don't care. I really don't. I think there was an argument in the City game about how Arteta set up in that match. I don't think he set up with the selection in the right way for the home game against City. I think that's the only time this season really where I can look to a selection and think, yeah, I think we probably should have took the game more to City. I don't think Mourinho starting that game was right. And I think at Anfield, he should have been more proactive in some of his substitutions in the second half. They're really my only complaints about this season. They're really my only complaints about Arteta. And also it's, again, I almost think that it's other people not remembering there are 2 teams on a pitch. There are 2 teams in a game. And teams coming up against Arsenal know that if you sit back and you defend deep and you absorb pressure, you can potentially get some joy from that. But then you need to be perfect everywhere else. And most teams aren't perfect everywhere else. And Arsenal exploit that, and they exploited that yesterday. They should have got more. Gyokeres probably should have scored one of his 3 chances. We arguably could have got 1, maybe even 2 in some people's minds, penalties. We scored a good goal. Calafiori, if he was an inch onside, scores a brilliant goal. We were dominant. We were deserving. We were good after the first 15 to 20 minutes. We were very much the better side. We played some good football too. Saka had Sessegnon on toast all afternoon. I just find it odd. I also find it's the same names. It's the same names. Maybe it's a you problem. I say that with all the love and respect to them. Maybe it's a you problem. Maybe it's not Arsenal problem. Maybe it's a you problem. Maybe what's the word? You're a bit shallow. You're always looking for the pretty option. Maybe a bit shallow. Real Gunner says, Tom, Liverpool will take our result yesterday and score the same way, and they will say they're brilliant, beating the mighty United. Well, I guess we'll wait and see. JD says, Saka is incredible. Will go down as one of the true greats. What do you think he needs to do with Arsenal to be one of the Ballon d'Or winners? I mean, he needs to contribute goals on a more regular basis. He needs to win the biggest of trophies. And he needs to be one of the talismanic figures in winning those trophies. So that's how he would potentially win the Ballon d'Or. DT Drape says, is the Atletico... Sorry. Just going to zoom in on that word. Atletico. Oh. Is the Atletico game a chance to rotate a few positions? Leo for Gabby, Cali for Miles Lewis-Skelly or Hincapié, or go with the same. I mean, Hincapié didn't even make the squad yesterday, so I'm not sure that we can say that he should be starting in the next game. But yeah, certainly I think there's some rotation. Martinelli for Trossard, maybe Marino for Eza, potentially, just because of having some more industrious nature in it. Atleti are a very physical team. Maybe Eza on the left and Marino in the middle with Rice and Zubi is something that we could do in this game to give us a little bit more control. And then obviously maybe like Miles Lewis-Skelly at left back potentially. But, we've got Crystal Palace at home the following weekend. We've got 2 home games in a row. It's not too much travelling, but it is a lot of football. It's a lot of football. Just having a quick look at Atletico's fixtures. In recent games, I think they've been pretty good. But they're sitting 4th currently in the table. They've played 9 games in La Liga. They've got 16 points, 1-4, drawn 4, lost 1. So they're a frustrating team. They've frustrated, 8 sides so far this season, taking points off 8 of them. So they're They've won 1-0 against Osasuna yesterday. I mean, they were given a Saturday kickoff like Arsenal. They played 5 at the back at home to Osasuna, which is kind of mad, really, when you think about it. Alvarez is obviously the danger man without a doubt, but Barrios is a really exciting young Spanish midfielder. Koke brings the experience, of course. Baino, who they've brought in as well, who previously was with Villarreal, great creative player. But Jose Maria Jimenez and Hanko and Lenormand are some really decent defenders. And Marcos Llorente is a stalwart on that right-hand side for Simeone. But they've got options off the bench. They've got Simeone's son, Giuliano Simeone. Raspadori, Italian, exciting player. Conor Gallagher, of course, can offer quality in the midfield. Alexander Sorloth is and can be a dangerous striker in his time. So, they've got options. They've got some good players. But Arsenal should be winning this game. They should be winning this game still. Absolutely. Let's go to Isoa says, all this talk of being shallow, yet we have an egg for trophies to back up Arteta's brilliant. An egg? What are you talking about, mate? So this is ultimately where, unfortunately, Isoa and fellow critics like you just fall down. Like you undermine your own legitimacy by kind of making silly comments. Like, it's all well and good. If you've got an argument, that's great. But if you want to start calling the FA Cup an egg, feel free to do that. But again, it just makes, when you're so desperate to win trophies, yet you talk down about what we've won, it doesn't work too well. It doesn't look too great. And ultimately, when you're sitting top of the table, it just looks so disingenuous to be the ones in the chat that want to be a little bit different, want to be critical. I get it. It's more fun, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what's fun about it. That's the only way I can kind of contextualize it. But until we actually start to drop points and lose games and look like we're slipping away, maybe just park it. Maybe just park it for a bit. Maybe just enjoy winning for once, rather than just being so down on everything in some way, shape, or form. Maximus says, Tom, do you think Fulham approached the game to not lose? No, I don't think so. I think Fulham approached the game to hit Arsenal on the counter, to try and exploit any loose passes, which they did in the opening 15 minutes or so. No, I don't think they set up the game not to lose. I think they tried to win the game in their way. And I think setting up in their way, you might view it as trying not to lose, but I think that they still tried to win the game and were competitive and caused problems and exploited our loose passes at times as well. So, no, I don't think they set up in that way at all. Supporter says, is it just me, or does our whole fan base have a delusion when it comes to our academy players? I want to win more than see Waneri, Mosler, Skilly, and Dowman play, yet people are mad at Arteta for not playing. I don't think the whole fan base, but maybe some elements of it as well. Diallo says, Tom, your most honest appraisal of Smith Rowe at Fulham so far. I've already touched on it. I think he's been disappointing. I think that he's in danger of seeing his career fall into a bit of a slippery slope, sadly. And I hope it improves desperately. Yes, of course it's Win the Dog sitting on the desk. Of course I bought Win the Dog. Have you ever seen a soft toy annoy so many adults? Of course I bought it. Why wouldn't I buy it? This is an iconic figure. Never has a soft toy annoyed so many men in their 30s and 40s and 50s as we saw this soft toy achieve when it was announced. Of course I bought it. It's hilarious. Avanesh is, Tom, who are your top 5 players most entertaining to watch with Arsenal or in the world? Because they're very different questions if that's the case. But I mean, top 5 is a lot. I can give you just a couple of players I enjoy watching, of course, but I think Julian Alvarez has been a delight at Atletico Madrid, and I'm looking forward to seeing him come to the Emirates. I hope he doesn't succeed, but he's a player I've just got such an enjoyment to watch and enjoy his kind of just throw caution to the wind type attitude to games. I've always enjoyed Bradley Barcola. Like, I love the way he plays. He's not refined completely, but I just love the way he plays. I really do enjoy watching Bradley Barcola play. Who else? I have to watch Szoboszlai through gritted teeth sometimes. I've always really enjoyed Dominic Szoboszlai, even though he plays for our rivals. So it's irritating that they signed him. He's proven to be so versatile, even though it's annoying to me that Liverpool have never really used Szoboszlai in the way that he should have been used. But he's still, in my opinion, one of the most underrated players in the Premier League, no doubt. Semenyo has been excellent this season to watch for Bournemouth. I don't think there can be too much argument about how impressive he's been to watch either. And then the ruthlessness of Erling Haaland this season again has been something just kind of awe-inspiring to watch, is just kind of associating what a centre forward can do with so little. You know, sometimes I think he had 3 touches in the box, scored twice. That's what a striker is, isn't it? 3 touches in the box, 2 goals. Shay says, I think there is a value in having academy players perform for us. It inspires others to follow suit and ensures players play for the badge, not the money. Well, thankfully, we've got quite a few making their way into the squad and getting minutes as well. But I do think people put a little bit too much emphasis on it. So Nicholas says, Tom, on the broadcast, both the Fulham manager and the players looked incredibly discouraged when they didn't take an opportunity, like they knew probably they weren't going to get another one. Well, yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because Arsenal will limit you to so few opportunities. It's amazing how we suffocate other sides. We just produce defensive masterclasses like I've never seen. Like we are more defensively imperious than some of the best Arsenal sides ever. Arsenal have conceded so far 3 goals, I think. Is that right? 3 goals? 3 goals all season. That's mad. That is mad. 3 goals in 8 games so far. The nearest to us, who have conceded the next least, are Tottenham, who have conceded 5. They have to play a game today, of course. They've played a game less than us. And then it's City with 6. And Sunderland, wow, with 6 as well. Sunderland doing excellently this season. What a campaign they're having. Granit Xhaka. I want them to stay up because Granit Xhaka's there. That's the only reason, really. But fair play to them. Like, Arsenal conceded 3 goals so far in the first 8 games. If that continues, and bear in mind, Arsenal have played some of the toughest sides already that they could have faced this season. You know, they've gone to Man United, they've gone to Newcastle, they've gone to Anfield, they've played Man City. They've conceded 3 goals. So what do we have to? What's the maths for this? 38 divided by 8 times by 3. At the moment, Arsenal are on course to concede just over 14 goals. Now, the record, I think, is 15, is it not? Which team has conceded the fewest ever goals in the Premier League season? I think it's Chelsea, and I think it's 15. Chelsea in 2004-2005 conceded 15 goals. So at the moment, Arsenal are producing a defensive performance that is on par, if not slightly better, than Chelsea's record-breaking 2004-2005 season. That's how impressive Arsenal have been defensively this year. David Raya is on 5 clean sheets from 8 games, which is more than a third of his tally from last season in less than a quarter of the games played. It's wow. It is absolutely mad to think about it. Diallo says, Tom, do you think the lefties will win 11 against 11? No, I think the righties would win in a game between the 2 sides. And I've asked Arteta that question myself, but he was reluctant to give an answer, but in terms of a direct answer, but that wasn't really the point of the question, to be fair. And he gave a very good answer around kind of the balance that it has in the side. Iama says, we're in such a good place right now, missing Noni, Kai, Martin, Gabs in the attack, and looks so strong defensively, winning away to Newcastle and Fulham. I have a good feeling about this season. Thankfully, finally, some positivity. No, I know that most of you in the chat box have been very positive about this. Nick says, what's the clean sheet record? I don't know that. I imagine it was probably in the same season. Who has kept the most Premier League clean sheets in a single season? Czech's 24 clean sheets in a single season remains the current record. So Petr Cech with Chelsea in 2004-2005. 24 clean sheets. That's woof. 24 clean sheets. Goodness gracious me. That's incredible. 24 clean sheets. I mean, we've got 5 in 8. So at the moment, that's the wrong way of doing it, isn't it? 38 divided by 8 times by 5. Yeah, I mean, David Raya's on 23.75 projected clean sheets, so it would be in line with that at the moment. So that's quite the record to be able to try and beat it, isn't it? Very, very difficult. She says lefties and righties. What does that mean? Left-footed players versus right-footed players. Don't worry, we're not going political. It's not that conversation. Don't you worry. Steve says Chelsea has had 3 red cards in 3 games. Would the media be any different if it was Arsenal? I think they've had 4, haven't they? Because I think Maresca got sent off in one of the games as well. Yeah, it is mad the amount of red cards they've had so far this season. Maxime says, makes sense. If you only allow 15 goals, then the clean sheets would have to be above 20. Yeah, by definition, it would have to be above 20. So, yeah. But 24 is woof. Very, very impressive. Let's scroll, just see if I've missed anything. Political Junkie says, fair analysis, particularly thoughts about Eze and Gyokeres. What I loved more about this show is how sassy you are. It reminded me of that cheerleader from a movie from Bring It. I can be sassy. I only get sassy because I just get so frustrated sometimes with just how monotonously irritating some of our critics can be. That's why I get sassy. It's just, and it's almost like I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for them. That Arsenal can sit where they sit, having performed how they've performed, with records that they're breaking, and yet still some people are just so miserable. So miserable. It's sassiness from a place of care. I'm sassy because I care about them. That's what it is. I hope they're okay. I really hope they're just all right. I hope they're all right. I really hope they are. And I hope they can learn to enjoy winning. It sounds weird, doesn't it? That you have to learn to enjoy winning games, but it's just, it's mad to me. Anyway, we've been going for over an hour this morning again. So thank you so much as always for tuning in. Tomorrow there will be a show, even though it's a press conference day. The press conference is a little bit later on, so I should be able to squeeze in a show before heading up to the Shopper Royalty Training Centre to watch the open training session ahead of Mikel Arteta's press conference before Arsenal take on Atletico Madrid. The grind never stops. Arsenal sit top. Mark Chow's dropped in a super chat and says, Tom, kind of wild how Wirtz, Isak, Ekitike are earning more than well-established players in the Arsenal team. Well, and they're not producing more at the moment right now. But Ekitike, I think, aside, but certainly Wirtz and Isak struggling a bit. Thank you so much as always for tuning in, people. Really appreciate your time. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic rest of your Sunday. Enjoy yourselves. We'll be raking down, of course, all the other results from the weekend in tomorrow morning's show as well. But very much looking forward to speaking with you then. I hope you've had a great time with us and that you'll drop a like and subscribe if you're new. The match day vlog will be available on my Instagram in the coming hours at Tom Cantor Media if you want to go and follow me over on Instagram. But there'll be a behind-the-scenes match day vlog of the day over at Fulham going up there very soon, shortly. So enjoy. Stay safe. Stay well. Stay happy and respectful. Stay happy. Stay happy, people. We're top. Enjoy it, please. I beg. And as always, up the Arsenal.